We're 100% focused on open world PvE in World of Warcraft, things like leveling, world quests, and delves. My name is Setsuko, and in this video, what I want to do is go over the priest class talent tree with you and just kind of talk about which talents I feel are really valuable in open world content, which ones you could probably skip, and everything in between. So keep in mind as we do this that we're going to assume that you are playing solo, you're doing delves, world quests, you're leveling on your own, whatever the case may be. And so that really means that in the case of priest, we are going to be gravitating a lot more towards the damage dealing abilities and talents and away from some of the healing abilities and talents. Even if they are staples in things like raids or dungeons, we don't necessarily want them in the context that we're talking about here. So we're going to get started by taking a look at our starter talents for each of the different specializations. So for Shadow and Discipline, we're going to have the Shadow Fiend as our first starter talent. This is a 3-minute cooldown that summons a Shadowy Fiend to attack a target for 15 seconds. This does generate some resources for you. So on Shadow, it's going to give you some Insanity. On Discipline, it's going to give you some mana. And if you do pick it up on Holy, it's also going to give you some mana. This is an okay ability to have. I definitely don't think it's a mandatory pickup, but it is nice to pop on like rare spawns and elites where you know that that fiend's going to be able to attack that target for 15 seconds and that resource generation is helpful. Either way, we start out with it, and I feel like this is a mandatory talent to pick up for all specializations because of what it leads into, which is the second starter talent for Shadow Priest, which is Shadow Word Death. Shadow Word Death is an instant cast ability with a 10-second cooldown. It deals a bunch of damage. It's basically an execute ability. It does 250% increased damage to targets below 50% health, and it does 150% damage to targets below 20% health. Now, if you attack a target with Shadow Word Death and it doesn't die as a result, you do take backlash damage equal to 5% of your maximum health. So typically what I'm doing with this is I'm waiting till a target gets below 20% health. Maybe they're getting to 10% health, and then I'm casting Shadow Word Death to do a bunch of damage to them and basically finish them off. In the case of Shadow Priest, you generate a little bit of Insanity resource as well when you do that. Really, really good ability to have on all three specializations. When it comes to open world content and leveling, just having something to help you finish off enemies like that is really, really nice. Discipline, their second talent is going to be Renew. So this is an instant cast heal over time ability. It will heal you over 15 seconds. Holy Priest also has this as their first starter talent, and the second starter talent for Holy Priest is going to be Prayer of Mending. This is an instant cast ability on a 12-second cooldown that heals for a little bit, and then the idea is that it's going to jump around to different allies and heal them as well. So it's a lower heal because it's expected to jump and do more overall healing, but when you're playing solo, it doesn't jump. So it's not super valuable in that type of content. So Renew in general, I feel like for Shadow Priest, you've got other ways to heal yourself over time. So you may or may not want to pick this one up. You're going to have this with Discipline and Holy, and it's a perfectly fine ability to use to just cast on yourself, kind of keep your health topped off. So that's pretty nice. Shadow Fiend is going to be a mandatory pickup because it leads into Shadow Word Death. And then Prayer of Mending is a skip on both Shadow Priest and Discipline, whereas Holy just has to have it because they start with it. So let's finish off our top row here with Dispel Magic. This will remove a magic effect from an enemy. In general, I don't find a lot of use for this in open world content. If you know that you need it, you'll know that you need it. You'll be fighting a specific type of enemy or a specific boss where removing a magic effect is really important. If that's the case, you can spec into Dispel Magic and then spec out of it when you're done. But outside of those niche cases, I generally don't find these to be super useful. So this is an easy skip for me for all specializations. Moving on to our second row, we've already covered Prayer of Mending. Next, we have improved Flash Heal. So this increases the healing done by your Flash Heal by 15%. Now, you're going to have other ways to heal yourself on all three specializations, but all three specializations do use Flash Heal as one of their primary ways to heal themselves. And as a result, I think this is a mandatory pickup on all three specializations. Maybe if you're in a really strong shield build for Discipline where you're not taking damage, you can skip on this. Or Holy Priest, if you've got plenty of other ways to heal yourself because you just can't avoid picking them up in your spec tree, then maybe you could pass on this. But in general, I just find boosting Flash Heal is overall a nice thing to do. So in this case, if you don't already have Renew, in the case of Shadow, I would pick up Renew and then go into Improved Flash Heal. For Discipline and Holy Priest, you're just going to be able to pick it up because you already have Renew. The next ability we have is Purified Disease, and pretty much everything that I said for Dispel Magic applies here, except in this case, I don't really find that there are diseases that are so bad in open world content that you need to remove them from yourself. If you do, you can spec into this. Otherwise, easy skip for me on all three specializations. Next, we have a choice node. So first here is Psychic Voice. It reduces the cooldown of Psychic Scream by 15 seconds. That's an AoE Fear ability that we have that typically has a 45-second cooldown. This will bring it down to a 30-second cooldown. The other choice here is Petrifying Scream. This makes it so that when you use Psychic Scream, instead of fleeing, the enemies tremble in place. Now, generally, I have used Psychic Scream as a oh crap button in the past when, I got in over my head and wanted everything to run away because I was also going to run away. And that's generally where I found the value in it if I didn't have some other sort of, build thing tied to it. But in general, I don't like to use Psychic Scream because I don't want enemies to run far away from me and potentially pull in even more enemies. So for me, I think Petrifying Scream here is a very nice pickup because it causes enemies to tremble in place instead of fleeing in fear. And to me, that makes Psychic Scream more of something I can work into my regular rotation as potentially an interrupt or as just something to cast, right when the enemies get on you. So you have a little bit of downtime if you've pulled more than one enemy where you can work on another one. So in general, you can skip this node for sure, but I think I will probably be picking up Petrifying Scream as a way to work in Psychic Scream to my rotations on all three specializations. We've already covered Shadow Word Death. Again, for Discipline Priest, definitely pick it up. And for Holy Priest, spec into Shadow Fiend so that you can pick up Shadow Word Death. Moving on to the third row, our first ability here is Focused Mending. So this makes it so that Prayer of Mending does increased healing to the initial target. Again, I just don't want to use Prayer of Mending. This does make it a more reasonable heal if you are on Holy and Discipline, but I just don't want to spec into it. I don't want to build it up. I'm fine using my Flash Heal and the other types of heals built into my kit. So this is an easy skip for me. Next, we have Holy Nova. This is an AoE ability that deals damage and heals all enemies and allies. So it's going to deal damage to all enemies, heal all allies within 12 yards. This gets reduced if there's more than 5 targets. Really, this is a skip for me unless you are building into something that really takes advantage of Holy Nova or you're focused on creating a build where you're going to be pulling 5 enemies at a time and just trying to nuke them down. If you're not doing that, you can skip Holy Nova here, especially on Shadow Priest. Maybe you can pick it up Discipline, Holy Priest, depending on your build. But I don't find this to be super useful in open world content unless you are specifically trying to pull like 5 targets at a time, which you can definitely do some builds like that. But if you're more focused on a 1-2 pulls at a time sort of build, you don't want to use Holy Nova on 2 enemies. So take a look at your build and kind of make the determination from there. Next, we have a choice node here. So Protective Lights says casting Flash Heal on yourself reduces all damage you take by 10% for 10 seconds. And then From Darkness Comes Light says each time Shadow Word Pain deals damage, the healing of your next Flash Heal is increased by 3%, up to a maximum of, this says 6,000. I don't know if that's actually how far it's going to go up, or if that's, you know, maybe like just a bug or like a beta type thing here. But either way, I think you should definitely pick up one of these two, and which one you pick up is just going to depend. I would pick up Protective Light if you find yourself casting Flash Heal on a regular basis. You pull 1, 2, 3 things, or maybe you do a big group pull and then you Flash of Light right afterwards. Or sorry, Flash Heal. If I say Flashlight, I apologize. Get it mixed up with the Paladin heal there. Flash Heal, you cast Flash Heal right afterwards, and then you got that reduced damage for the next group that you pull. So if you're casting Flash Heal on a regular basis, then I think you should take Protective Light here, because you're going to be able to maintain a 10% damage reduction buff on yourself almost constantly. On the other hand, if you find that your build is pretty good, maybe you got a lot of shields, maybe you got a lot of, you know, other self-healing, maybe you're just not taking a whole lot of damage, then I would go for From Darkness Comes Light, because that way, as you're doing all those other things, you're building up to a big flash heal when you really need it, and it becomes more of an emergency heal. All three specializations are going to use Shadow Word Pain, so you're going to be stacking this buff on here if you choose this talent. So either way, I would grab one of these two, depending on your playstyle, depending on your build, just to boost up that flash heal as well. Next, we have Angelic Feather. So this will place a feather at the target location, and then whoever walks through it gets 40% movement speed increase for 5 seconds. It's got 3 charges. Priests are slow, and you don't have a whole lot of movement speed increase abilities and things like that. So whenever you can find them, to me, they are mandatory pickups. So Angelic Feather, definitely mandatory pickup, all 3 specializations. Hopefully you're getting here through improved flash heal, or you're getting there through one of the psychic screen nodes here. Next, we have Phantasm. Activating Fade removes all snare effects. Fade's an ability that will reduce the threat we have, which is pretty much worthless in solo content. I also don't value removing snare effects in open world content that highly either, so this is an easy skip for me on all 3 specializations. Next, we have Death and Madness. So this makes it if your Shadow Word Death fails to kill a target that you've attacked that was below 20% health, the cooldown gets reset so you can cast it again. Okay, this can't occur more than once every 10 seconds, and if the target dies within 7 seconds after being struck by Shadow Word Death, you gain 8 Insanity on Shadow Priest. On Discipline and Holy, it just resets the cooldown. To me, this is a nice pickup. I would say basically mandatory unless you really have a good grasp on when to cast Shadow or Death to make sure the target is killed off. Because if you mess it up, even by 2 or 3 health points, and the target doesn't die, you're going to take that backlash, and then the target's still alive. So being able to cast that Shadow or Death again to finish off the target is very nice. So if you've got a really good handle on your Shadow Word Death cast timings and health percentages, maybe you could skip this one, but for most people I think it's a good one to pick up, because you're probably going to mess up your Shadow Word Death casts sometimes, and being able to recast that is very nice. And then on Shadow, getting that Shadow Word Death insanity generation regardless is really nice as well. Moving to the next row, we have a choice node. So we have Spell Warding. This reduces all magic damage taken by 3%. And then we have Blessed Recovery. After being struck by a melee or ranged critical hit, heal 20% of the damage taken over 6 seconds. I do like this talent point. So if you are in Discipline or Holy and you've already got Prayer of Mending, I think it's definitely worth picking up here. Personally, I like Blessed Recovery. You're going to be getting hit by all the hits. It's very likely that one of them is going to be a critical at some point, and so healing 20% of the damage that you take is very nice. Not mandatory by any means, but if you've got points to spare, then this is not a bad one to put that into. If you are Shadow Priest, then it's up to you. Holy Nova is probably not going to do a whole lot for you, but neither is Prayer of Mending. So you just take one of these to get into this point here, you know, depending on where you're spending your other points. Next, we have Rhapsody. Every 1 second, the damage of your next Holy Nova is increased by 20%, and its healing is increased by 20%. This stacks up to 20 times. If you are getting Holy Nova, and you're not doing it as just a travel talent point to get to something else, 100% mandatory pickup. This is going to massively increase the damage of your Holy Nova. I would say the only scenario where I wouldn't pick this up is if I'm specifically creating like a Holy Nova spam build where I'm going to cast Holy Nova over and over and over and over, pull another group, Holy Nova over and over and over and over. Then, you know, the value of this goes down quite a bit. But if you're picking it up because you're occasionally casting it out, it's very, very nice. You can get a really strong Holy Nova off. You could even just pull enemies and, you know, dot them up, do whatever you want to do, etc. And during the time that you're doing that, you're building up the damage of Holy Nova, and then you put it out there and it just hits for way, way more than it normally would. So depends on your build, but in general, if you're using Holy Nova outside of anything that's not just a spam Holy Nova build, I would pick this up. Next, we have Leap of Faith. This is an instant cast ability with a 1.5-minute recharge. It pulls the spirit of a party or raid member, moving them directly in front of you. Hard pass, all specializations, you don't need this. Next, we have Shackle Undead. This is a ability that will root, essentially, a undead, preventing all actions and movement. Damage will cancel the effect. Easy skip for me for this one, unless you're in an area where this is valuable. There's undead around and you want to have that CC for maybe a group of a couple of them, but in general, easy skip for me. Next, we have a choice node, Sheer Terror. Increases the amount of damage required to break your Psychic Scream by 75%. And then Void Tendrils summons shadowy tendrils, rooting all enemies within 8 yards for 15 seconds, or until the tendril is killed. Both of these are fairly valuable. I here would choose Sheer Terror based on the fact that I've picked up Petrifying Scream, and I'm looking at kind of working Psychic Scream into more of my regular rotation here. But either one of these is good. Neither one of them is a mandatory pickup, but you need to pick up one of these 3 abilities here to get into Power Infusion, which we'll talk about in a minute. And out of these 3 nodes here, I would definitely take this choice node and go with one of these 2. So our next choice node here, and the final talent on this row, contains Mind Control and Dominate Mind. In general, I don't find a whole lot of value in this in open world content. Mind Control will let you control a mine up to 1 level above yours for 30 seconds. And then Dominate Mine will control a mine up to 1 level above yours for 30 seconds while you still control your own mine. In general, I find this to be kind of gimmicky, and it's more of a utility, but it's a utility that I don't feel like we really need in open world content. So this is a skip for me on all specializations. On the next row, we have Word of the Pious. For 12 seconds after casting Power Word Shield, you deal 10% additional damage and healing with Smite and Holy Nova. So Discipline and Holy Priest are both going to be using Smite. So again, this is a great pickup for that, and that's another reason to go ahead and put a point into either Spell Warding or Blessed Recovery, so that you can put a point into Word of the Pious as well, just to have that additional damage. You're going to cast Power Word Shield on yourself constantly, so you're going to have this buff on a regular basis. Next, we have Mass Dispel, 2-minute cooldown that dispels harmful magic effects. We covered what I think about that. An AoE version is not any more valuable, especially on a 2-minute cooldown to me. So this is an easy skip on all specializations. Next, we have Move with Grace. This reduces the cooldown of Leap of Faith, which we're not picking up anyway, so easy skip. Power Infusion is a 2-minute cooldown ability that infuses the target with power for 15 seconds, increasing their haste. Mandatory pickup for all 3 specializations. This is one of the few non-spec specific ways that you can boost your damage output. There's no increased damage here, but the haste will mean that you are casting faster, you're getting more spells in the same time you're dealing more damage. Next, we have a choice node. Sanguine Teachings increases your leech by 2%, or Vampiric Embrace, 2-minute cooldown. That causes you to heal a nearby ally for 40% of any single target shadow spell damage you deal. So Vampiric Embrace here is an okay pickup for Shadow or Discipline. A pass on this one for Holy Priest. You will do some shadow damage, but you're going to do a lot of holy damage as well. Discipline, it depends on where your build's going. But in general here, I would probably pick up Sanguine Teachings for 2% leech just to give you some more passive healing. Not a mandatory pickup on the basis of the talent itself, but a nice to have if you have the points. Next, we have Tithe Evasion. So Shadow Word Death deals 50% less damage to you. Okay, so generally, you should get a good handle on Shadow Word Death so that it doesn't deal damage to you at all. So if you're getting good with Shadow Word Death, this won't matter that much. However, if you're still learning, it could be a nice thing to put a point in here so that you're only taking 2.5% backlash damage. Or if you're just planning on, using Death and Madness to spam Shadow Word Death twice, knowing you're going to take some damage, that could be a nice pickup here as well. So this is really, it's a take it or leave it depending on where you're at. Next, we have Inspiration. Reduces your target's physical damage taken by 5% for 15 seconds after a critical heal with Flash Heal. Not too worried about this one. You could pick it up if you feel like you need more defense, but we've got other ways to incorporate defense, and we're going to be doing a good amount of healing for ourselves, so not too worried about this one. Next, we have Mental Agility. This reduces the mana cost of Purify Disease and Mass Dispel and Dispel Magic. Easy pass. We're not picking up any of those abilities. Next, we have Body and Soul. Power Word Shield and Leap of Faith increase your target's movement speed by 40% for 3 seconds. Mandatory pickup, all 3 specializations. This makes it so that you can basically cast Power Word Shield to boost your movement speed. And again, like I said, you want movement speed on Priest. Next, we have Twins of the Sun Priestess. Power Infusion also grants you 100% of its effects when used on an ally. We're not going to use it on an ally, so an easy skip here. If you are partnered up, then you could pick this one up to kind of do a dual boost for Power Infusion. Next, we have Void Shield. When cast on yourself, 30% of damage you deal refills your Power Word Shield. Mandatory pickup, all 3 specializations. Again, you're going to have Power Word Shield up all the time. You're going to be dealing damage all the time, so getting more shield is just really nice. Next, we have Sand Lane. So depending on what you've picked above, this has different effects. In this case, this will give you 2% more leech through Sanguine Teachings, or if you picked up Vampiric Embrace, it will reduce the cooldown by 30 seconds and increase the healing done. I like to pick this one up, not mandatory, but now we've got 4% leech from the talent tree, so just more passive healing there. Then we have Apathy. Your Mind Blast critical strikes reduce your target's movement speed by 75% for 4 seconds. This can be an okay pickup if you're spec'd heavily into Mind Blast. You'll be doing Mind Blast a lot on our Shadow Priest here. And for the Holy Priest, it changes it to Holy Fire. You're going to be using those abilities quite a bit. The reduction in movement speed can be nice. The reliance on critical strikes just kind of depends there. So if you feel like you are doing a good amount of criticals and also you want a way to slow the target when you initially kind of attack them, then you could pick this up. You could also skip this. I tend to rely on the fact that I have a very nice Power Word Shield as opposed to trying to daze or slow the target, to prevent some of that or to deal with the damage. So for me, this is probably a skip unless I just have an extra point to put in. Next, we have Unwavering Will. So while above 75%, the cast time of your various abilities based on your spec is reduced by 10%. Now, we could put 2 points into this. That gets us to that 10%. So for Shadow, it's going to be Flash Heal. For Discipline, it's going to be Flash Heal and Smite. And then for Holy, it's going to be Flash Heal, Heal, Prayer of Healing, and Smite. So for Discipline, getting the cast reduction on Smite, very nice. Holy, same thing. That Smite reduction is nice. Shadow, the Flash Heal here is not super valuable in my opinion. We've got a way potentially to make Flash Heal be an instant cast, which we'll see later. So depending on how we work our way into that, I may or may not pick that up. So we'll revisit this one after we see that talent point. Twist of Fate. After damaging or healing a target below 35% health, you gain increased damage and healing for 8 seconds. This one can be pretty nice. This is actually going to boost up to 10% increased damage with 2 points put in. Nice, just generic ability. You are going to be damaging targets below 35% health because you are the one that's killing all of them. So, you know, this is just a nice damage boost that will hopefully pull you into finishing the target or into the next enemy that you're going to fight. Definitely don't have to pick these up. May pick them up depending on how you want to get down into the bottom of the talent tree here. And then we have Throes of Pain. So for Discipline, your Shadow Word Pain and Purge the Wicked deal 3% additional damage when an enemy dies while affected by Shadow Word Pain or Purge the Wicked. Then you're going to gain resource. You're going to gain mana. So with Discipline, it's Shadow Word Pain and Purge, and you gain mana. With Holy and Shadow, it's Shadow Word Pain, and you gain mana for Holy. You gain Insanity for Shadow. Okay. Nice pickup here. This is actually, it gets up to 5% additional damage. You're going to cast Shadow Word Pain constantly. 5% increase it's just nice. It's just nice passive damage here. So I would probably pick this one up in general over the other ones here to start, and then kind of figure out where I wanted to fill in from there. Moving on to our next talent row here, we've got a choice between Angel's Mercy. This reduces the cooldown of Desperate Prayer by 20 seconds. Desperate Prayer is a defensive we have that increases our maximum health and also heals us as well. So this is a cooldown reduction on that. And then Binding Heals makes it so that Flash Heal healing on other targets also heals you. So if you're going to pick up one of these, it would be Angel's Mercy. Whether or not we pick that up depends on if we want Surge of Light, which we absolutely do. So I would go for Angel's Mercy here, and then we'll roll right into Surge of Light real quick. This makes it so that your healing spells and Smite have an 8% chance to make your next Flash Heal instant and cost no mana. That is very, very, very worth it to me. For Discipline and Holy in particular. Not as much on Shadow Priest. Depends on how often you're using healing spells, which is probably not very often. But for Holy Priest, you definitely will be, and you'll be using Smite. And for Discipline, you'll be using Smite as well. So on those two specializations, I would definitely get Surge of Light. On Shadow Priest, probably a good chance we pass on that, and we also pass on Unwavering Will, or potentially we grab Unwavering Will because we know we're not going to get the Surge of Light down there. Next, we have a choice between Divine Star and Halo. Divine Star is a 15-second cooldown ability that throws a star forward 27 yards, healing allies and dealing damage to enemies, and then it returns to you and does the same thing. In general, I don't like to pick this up unless I really feel like I just need more sources of damage, which is primarily going to be on Holy Priest. So I may pick up this ability or pick up Halo. This is a 1-minute cooldown ability that creates a ring of shadow energy around you, expanding to 30 yards, healing allies, and dealing damage to targets within. Again, the range on these is actually too big, in my opinion, to want to use them very often in open world content. Because we don't want to pull additional enemies. That being said, you do have more control over Divine Star. It does have a shorter cooldown. And so in general, if I was going to grab one of these, it would be Divine Star. Next, we have Translucent Image. Fade reduces damage you take by 10%. If you feel like you need more defensives, you could definitely pick this up. Fade in general is not going to help you in its default state when you're by yourself. You're going to reduce threat to yourself primarily, which doesn't really work, but now you can use Fade as an ability that does give you 10% damage reduction instead, so it makes it useful in open world content. Very nice pickup here if you have the points. Cauterizing Shadows. When your Shadow Word Pain expires or is refreshed with less than 5 seconds remaining, a nearby ally within 40 yards is healed for a pretty decent amount here. This is a nice pickup. You're going to cast Shadow Word Pain on every target, and it's basically just going to be a free heal for you because you're basically the only ally within 40 yards. So this entire tier here is just nice pickups. Potentially, you could skip them. Really just make your choices based on where you want to get in the last 2 rows of the tree. For example, wanting to get that Surge of Light by going through here and grabbing Angel's Mercy. So let's look at our next row here. We've already gone over Surge of Light. Light's Inspiration. Increase the maximum health gain from Desperate Prayer by 8%. We can put 2 points into this, and that'll get us to 15%. That can be pretty nice. The maximum health increase also increases the heal that you get from it. So this can make this ability a little bit better if you're using it on a regular basis. But again, not one that you definitely have to pick up in my opinion. Then we have Crystalline Reflection. Power Word Shield instantly heals the target for a decent amount and reflects 6% of damage absorbed. Now this can double up to reflect 12% of the damage absorbed. Again, you're going to cast Power Word Shield on yourself all the time. So to me, this is a valuable pickup on every specialization out of what we've seen in this bottom portion of the tree. This is one of the strongest contenders for like a mandatory pickup in my opinion so far. Next, we have Improved Fade. This is going to reduce the cooldown of Fade, and it will reduce it by 10 seconds. If you're using Fade on a regular basis as a defensive cooldown, then you could put points in here. It's just kind of up to you. And then we have Manipulation. You take 2% less damage from enemies affected by your Shadow Word Pain. Again, that's just a nice one to have. Not necessary. 2% less damage isn't nothing, but it's not game breaking either. Moving on to our last talent row here, we have a choice between Benevolence and Power Word Life. Benevolence increases the healing of your spells by 3%. Not a big deal in open world content here. And then Power Word Light is an instant cast ability on a 15-second cooldown that heals the target for a lot. But it's only usable if the target's below 35% health. It's like a reverse execute. It's an O-Crap button. Hopefully on Disciplined Priest and Holy Priest, which are the specs that you're probably playing if you're on this side of the tree, you don't really need a spell like this. So could probably pass on this one. Next, we have Angelic Bulwark. When an attack brings you below 30% health, you gain an Absorb Shield equal to 15% of your max health for 20 seconds. This cannot occur more than once every 90 seconds. I do really like this talent point. I don't consider it mandatory, but considering the other options we have, it's a nice pickup just in case something happens. Maybe you could pair that up with your Power Word Life here. So you get an Absorb Shield. You're below 30% health, you can pop this and heal yourself back up for a ton. There's some sort of combos you can do there if you want to. Next, we have a choice node between Essence Devourer. Attacks from your Shadow Fiend siphon life from enemies, healing nearby injured allies. And attacks from your Mindbender siphon life, healing nearby allies as well. Or Void Shift. An instant cast ability with a 5-minute cooldown. You swap health percentages with your ally. This increases the lower health percentage of the two by 25% if below that amount. Neither one of these, in my opinion, is a great pickup. I think Void Shift has almost no value in the type of content we're talking about unless you're playing with someone else and your primary role here is healer, which again, that's not the approach that we're taking here. Essence Devourer can be nice, especially if you have some cooldown reductions on Shadow Fiend or something like that through your specialization tree, but you can take this one, you could leave it, you could put the points somewhere else that you think they're more valuable. Just depends on you. And then finally we have Phantom Reach. This increases the range of most spells by 15%. This is really valuable to me. Mandatory pickup for all 3 specializations. So I would probably go Cauterizing Shadows into Manipulation into Phantom Reach. And just taking a look at, where we have our points here, we got 2 points left on this side. So, it just kind of depends on what you're doing. Maybe you put that point in here and then you put that point into Surge of Light if you're playing Holy or Discipline. Maybe for Shadow, you're coming back here to grab, Essence Devourer. Maybe you're, putting some points into cooldown reduction on Fade. It just kind of depends, But in general, that's an overview of the priest class talent tree and what I think is really worth taking and what I think you can skip for open world content. Hopefully this has been helpful to you. If it has, throw a like on the video, subscribe to help support the channel, help us grow, and share this video with someone who's going to be playing Priest in the War Within. Thanks for taking time to watch one of my videos. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you on the next one.